talking to me?
Holy cow.
We talking about practice.
You're a goalie. You're supposed to be like that.
You cannot be serious!
Hello and welcome back to Sports Talk with Dad. This is a show where we talk about sports based on our own generational perspectives. My name is Kyle, and as always, I cannot call this Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting next to me, a man whose age is a newly found mathematical formula, my dad, Tim.
Thank you, Stephen Hawking. You know, we've watched a lot of football, as everybody has, over the last week. Some of the quarterback play we saw really didn't measure up to what the fans really wanted to see.
It didn't. I was disappointed with Mac Jones this past Saturday. I thought he was going to do more. He was supposed to be the next coming to Tom Brady, but stumbled a little bit against those Bills.
And I was watching a show on a completely other sport. MLB Network did a profile on Ernie Banks.
Yeah, one of my all-time favorite players, Mr. Dub himself.
Died 7 years ago now. It seems like forever. One of the most underrated players. Never gets brought up in the greatest shortstop or first baseman conversations.
Very true.
Made us have a conversation about who are the most overrated players of all time.
Yeah, I don't know if you really call it a conversation. It definitely turned into an argument when you said some of the players you said, and I said some of the players I did, but we stopped ourselves. We said, you know what? This is a great topic for this upcoming week. The players we think are the most overrated players of all time in American sports history.
We did. Matter of fact, it got to the point where we'd start having the argument and the other person would go, stop, save it for the show. So we have saved it. So a lot of the reaction you're going to see is going to be fresh reaction tonight.
It is.
Because you're just ridiculous. And as for one of your picks, I'm giving you one mulligan right now to withdraw that name.
No, I actually think a lot of people are going to agree with me on my number one pick.
Nobody's going to agree with
Yours is
you.
ridiculous.
Mine is not.
It is unbelievably ridiculous, and I can't wait to see the reaction in the comments below when you do decide that he is wrong about his number one pick and I'm right, by the way. Tell us in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to do this part right here. Like and subscribe and hit that little bell notification to make sure you get updates every time we drop a show. We do drop a show at least once a week, and we would like you to enjoy the show as much as we enjoy having these conversations. So let us know what you think below. I think we need to get into this.
Let's do it.
All right. The most overrated players of all time. We had a few of them. We decided let's narrow this down to our top three. You are starting us off, and you went after Yankees fans hard with this one and came up with Derek Jeter.
I not only went after Yankee fans, I went after Yankee sycophants. So Derek Jeter,
captain, man.
He is the captain. And for all of these, we aren't saying these guys aren't great players. They don't belong in the Hall of Fame. It's none of that.
Right.
But Derek Jeter has the greatest shortstop of all time. Not even close. He's an okay batter. He's got 3,400 hits. But he was, as far as defense goes, he was a well below average defensive shortstop to the point where he wasn't even the best shortstop on his own team.
You and I agree with that. The fact that A-Rod was not the shortstop on those Yankees teams boggles my mind. I mean, that was one of our conversations with most underrated players. Alex Rodriguez is a defensive shortstop. It is arguably the greatest shortstop of all time and never gets the credit for it because of the steroids worth hitting.
And we're not getting into this.
He definitely should have been the shortstop of those Yankees teams.
He should have. He should have. And if Derek Jeter is the captain, he looks at Rodriguez and goes, you're the better shortstop. I'm moving over to third, but he would never, ever do that. You know, he's got a .314 career batting average. He never hit more than 24 home runs in a single season, which kind of surprised me. He was never considered the best at his position. He never won an MVP. He was always this guy that was a nice shortstop, but I would put guys like Robin Yount ahead of him. I would put guys like Ozzy Smith ahead of him. I would put guys like Cal Ripken ahead of him?
Now, just to stop you there, you said he only hit 24 home runs in a season. I mean, Ozzy, just to play devil's advocate here, Ozzy Smith never hit that many home runs.
No, but Ozzy Smith was by far in the way the greatest defensive shortstop we've ever seen.
Almost a catcher twice.
I almost said it twice. He was so good, he's making me stumble. Ozzy redefined how to play defense at shortstop.
Yeah, I'm not denying you here, and I do think that Derek Jeter's overrated. He was a Yankee captain. I'm not going to deny that. But just to play devil's advocate, since he's on your list here,
Sure.
He was a 14-time All-Star. He won 5 World Series. He had over 3,400 hits. He was a 5-time Silver Slug Award winner, 2-time AL Hank Aaron Award winner. I mean, the list goes on and on his
Sure.
accomplishments, and he was a World Series MVP and an AL Rookie of the Year.
He still was a huge defensive liability his entire career. He did not play the position well. Everybody remembers the one play where he comes, flips it back.
The catcher.
Great.
It's one of the greatest plays of all time.
It's a nice play. He had a surrounding cast for him that was second to none. I mean, those Yankees teams were amazing. So he never had to be that guy. And let me ask you this. And this should solve this once and for all. If Derek Jeter played in Seattle,
nobody would know who he was.
He'd never get the accolades he does. The only reason he gets put up there as the greatest of all time, which is ridiculous, is because he played in New York. So he's my number 3 on the list. And I'm sorry, Yankee fans, but I'm so tired of hearing you say he's the greatest shortstop of all time. He's not.
Listen, if we had 4, he would have been on my list as well. I completely agree with you. Again, he does have a lot of accolades, but the All-Star game, baseball players, you can't necessarily judge that, right? It's a fan voting. And the last one, he definitely shouldn't have been there. He was voted in by fans because it was going to be his last All-Star game. And everybody wanted to see him.
I have no problems with the fans putting in who they wanted to see in the All-Star game. They did it for Cal Ripken. He had a great last act in the All-Star game. But that's what it is. It's a fans game. It's not like it used to be when the AL and NL never saw each other, and the game really was played for pride. Talk about All-Star moments. Pete Rose knocking out Ray Fossey.
Yeah, one of the dirtiest plays of all time.
It wasn't one of the dirtiest plays. It was just a hard-nosed play at home plate, but it did end Fossey's career. It's a play that never should have happened in an All-Star game. I will grant you that. But different conversation. Derek Jeter, great player, Hall of Fame player. Not the greatest shortstop of all time by any measure.
No, you could argue he's not even necessarily in the top 10 of all-time shortstops. I'm not going to argue. I agree with this. Like I said, he would have been on my list as well. Yeah, Hall of Fame player.
Yes, but not even the greatest shortstop on his own team. Right. Taking out the steroid era, we don't even talk about that. Alex Rodriguez, as you said, may have been, other than Ozzy Smith, the greatest defensive shortstop, and he may be at that Ozzy Smith level as far as defense.
He was unbelievable.
He really was.
He was the greatest player of my generation, with or without steroids, because again, the steroids, I should say, don't help you on the defensive side, and nothing got by Alex Rodriguez.
Nothing at all. He was always in position. He made unbelievable plays. Derek Jeter would have been a great third baseman. He still would have been a Hall of Famer, and he would have shown leadership had he moved over. But that's my number 3 on our list.
My number 3 is very personal. Being a Packer fan, I'm sure a lot of you won't be surprised that I put a bear on my list. I have William the Refrigerator Perry as my 3rd most overrated player of all time.
Before you get into it, doesn't a man have to be rated before he can be overrated? I've never put the Fridge on any list of great football players, let alone athletes.
He is the quintessential player that people remember in that Super Bowl run, and it drives me nuts. This guy was an okay player. He was a starting player on that your NFC Bears team, Super Bowl winning, but everybody remembers the Fridge, and they remember his spike during the Super Bowl. in a touchdown that should have been Walter Payton's.
Well,
You
I
know,
was going to say that was a dagger in Walter Payton's heart when he did that.
it was. It's just, it drives me nuts hearing Bears fans. Yes, I'm talking directly to you, Bears fans, talking about the Fridge as being one of their greatest players of all time, because you hear it all the time. He's the one that's remembered. Every Bears fan knows his name, yet there are kids out there that know the Fridge and don't know Butkus. There are kids out there that know the Fridge and don't know Walter Payton. Like,
The
they don't
Fridge
know
wasn't
Gale
good.
Sayers.
The Fridge wasn't good enough to crack their own defense on that 85 Bears defense. The only
Right.
reason he ever got in, the reason Dick could use him on offense, was because Buddy Ryan wouldn't allow him on his defense.
Right. It drives me crazy. Like I said, this is very personal because I hear Bears fans talk about the Fridge all the time. I see Fridge jerseys all over the place. And you don't see Gale Sayers jerseys. You don't see Walter Payton jerseys as much. That's not true. You see Walter Payton all the time, but you don't see Gale Sayers. You don't. I mean, the Bears have what, 30 Hall of Famers, and more Bears fans out there know the Fridge than they know their own Hall of Famers. It's like, John Kuhn was a good player for us for all those years, better than the Fridge ever was, and he was a fan favorite. But it's like if people remember John Kuhn more than they remembered Paul Horning or Bart Starr or Ray Nitschke. It's just, come on, Bears fans. I get that you had the one Super Bowl run, but you had Walter Payton, the greatest running back of all time, on your team, and you guys talk about a defensive lineman who stole a touchdown from your star running back in the Super Bowl.
Something that Payton never forgot. Dick can apologize from that day to the end of time. It's never enough. Fridge was a character.
He was the circus clown. I mean, he was the Ringling Brothers' main attraction. I can't stand it. Like I said, this is completely personal. I'm tired of hearing about the Fridge. He was a nice player. Talk to me about Gale Sayers, Walter Payton, or any of the other 30 Hall of Famers you have. Don't talk to me about the Fridge anymore.
So how do you really feel about him?
Yeah, I'm done now. I'm done. We can
Okay.
move on to yours. This was an interesting one. You're going to have to defend this one to me. You decided Nolan Ryan was overrated.
I've always thought that. Now, again, I'm going to say this so everybody hears it. Nolan Ryan, most strikeouts in history, holds a single season strikeout record.
Does.
The most feared pitcher of my lifetime, probably more than Randy Johnson, for the single reason that if you ran out on the mound and tried to attack him, you were going to get taken down. There was a report, as I was doing some of this research, Ryan may have thrown a 108-mile-an-hour fastball. Can't verify it, but he was that fast.
Right.
However, he never won a Cy Young Award. He was never considered the greatest pitcher on his team or of his generation. I mean, when you think of, if you were going to have a big game coming up from the people of that generation, I'm going to choose Bob Gibson.
Right.
I'm going to choose Tom Seaver. I'm going to choose Greg Maddux. There's a whole laundry list of players I want to pitch that very important game before I'm going to choose Nolan Ryan. He was very wild, which was part of his effectiveness. He lost 292 games. He won 324.
Right.
He walked, for his career, he averaged 4.67 walks per game. You can't be considered one of the all-time greats. And again, I'm going to go back to the argument used about Fridge. He is not the greatest. He shouldn't be considered the greatest pitcher of all time.
But I mean, in defense, I did the research on this too. I mean, the guy's a 8-time All-Star, which we already said All-Stars don't mean everything, right? He's a World Series champion. He's a 2-time National League ERA leader, 11-time strikeout leader, which is huge.
Well,
more strikeouts than anybody else. He has his number retired in 3 different stadiums.
Sure. I'm not taking anything away from Ryan.
7 no-hitters.
7 no-hitters. When he was on, he was untouchable. But if I'm going to go into Game 7 of the World Series, and I have to pick from all of the guys who pitched from 1960, he pitched for 27 years.
It's a long time.
Take out the first year, I think he only had he appeared in 1 inning or something. But so 26 seasons. of that 26-year period, of all the pitchers, Fergie Jenkins was in that period. Steve Carlton was in that discussion. On and on and on. I'm never going to. He is going to be so far down on my list of guys I'm going to pick to start that game. It's just I
I mean,
can't.
so what do you say to the guys? Because there's a lot of people out there that are going to disagree with this and say they'd
Sure.
have Nolan Ryan as their Game 7 pitcher without even a question.
4.67 walks. You're going to give up. You're going to put guys on base that often.
But this guy was a 2-time NL ERA leader.
Sure, when he's on, he was dynamite. But it took him 26 years. He won 324 games,
Right.
300 game winner.
Yes.
Again, he belongs in the Hall of Fame. But he lost almost as many. I mean, he was like 1 win for 1 loss. Not the guy I'm gonna choose to pitch Game 7, rather. Just not going to be that guy. Give me Gibson, who I know is going to bleed before he's going to give up a run.
Yeah, I mean, Gibson, the rules were literally changed for.
Right.
I mean, I don't think there's any denying that Bob Gibson was a better pitcher than Nolan Ryan all time.
Sandy Koufax.
But to say Nolan Ryan's overrated.
When you're talking about the all-time greats, and
This guy's on the all-century team.
Sure. Look, I have heard this from baseball fans. You talk about the fridge. I'm going to talk about guys I know who are baseball so-called fans and students of the game, and they're going, oh, Nolan Ryan's the greatest pitcher of all time. Really? You can't be 324 and 292 and be the best pitcher of all time. Warren Spahn won 363 games, and I think he lost less than 200.
I'd have to look it up.
I'd have to look it up. But give me a lot of guys. Give me Greg Maddux, who can't throw as fast, but boy, he could pitch.
He could pinpoint. Yeah, I mean, you had Roger Clemens. You had Randy Johnson. I mean, I'd take ahead of him too. But I mean, he's a Hall of Famer.
He is a Hall of Famer. So is Derek Jeter. Both Hall of Famers, but both overrated when you're considering them against the guys they're going against. If you're a Hall of Famer, that means you're going to get compared against the greatest of the great.
Right.
And I am one of those guys who thinks there's a Hall of Fame, but inside that Hall of Fame is a very special room for only the greatest of the greats, where the Babe Ruths, where the Joe Montanas, the Bart Starrs, and going back to baseball, the Warren Spahns get into. There's a very small room. The Willie Mazes, the Ted Williams, Sam Musial. And then there's the rest of the Hall of Famers. Nolan Ryan's in the rest of the Hall of Famers room. He's not in that little room that very few can ever get into. Bring it at me, guys.
Anybody else? 7 no-hitters.
Yep. 7 no-hitters.
I mean, you're saying a guy who holds 2 records that will never be broken, by the way.
He pitched for 26 years.
There's guys that have pitched that long that still don't have that many no-hitters.
No.
These guys have pitched for 20 years and haven't thrown
When
no-hitter.
he was on, but he was off as much as he was on, and he gave up way too many walks. Again, he's a Hall of Famer, but he's not the greatest of the great.
I'm not saying he's the greatest pitcher of all time, but he definitely.
But that's what
belongs in
other
the
people
special
say.
room. I mean, he has more strikeouts than anybody. That record will never be touched.
It
He has
won't be.
more no-hitters than anybody else. That record will never be touched.
But he doesn't belong in that little room when you're 324 and 292 and give up almost 5 walks per game. You just don't belong in the little room with the greatest of the greats. Warren Spahn, Cy Young, Bob Gibson, Sandy Koufax, they're looking at Nolan Ryan going, nice career, but stay over there with the other boys. Just my opinion. I want to hear what the listeners have to say.
That was a tough one to swallow. It was. I have to laugh at this because this is the one that kept coming up in conversations where we're like, save it for the show, because I just don't get how a man who has 2 records that'll never be touched, you don't consider in that small little room with the rest of the Hall of Famers.
324, 292, 4.7 walks. He was never the greatest pitcher of his generation.
All right, he has never won a Cy Young.
Never.
I can't argue that. His record speaks for itself.
Most
I mean,
feared.
he does have the walks.
Would I call him the most feared pitcher? Him and Randy Johnson is going to go either one of the two. Randy Johnson might get the edge because of what he did to the bird.
Right.
But and Nolan Ryan also had an awesome curveball. I'm not taking any of that away from him. But to get in that special room, you can't basically be,
All right. It's
one
your
for
list.
one win. It's my list, and I at least went out on a couple limbs, unlike Refrigerator Perry. But
well, I'm going to go on a big limb because I have a guy who is in the Hall of Fame, and I truly don't believe belongs there. It shocks me that he's in the Hall of Fame. And he's a guy that got in for his story and nothing more, and that is Kurt Warner on my number 2. I don't understand how this guy's in the Hall of Fame. This guy was a career backup. He was benched at every
4 times.
stop. 4 times. Listen to this list. He lost his starting job to Mark Bulger, to Josh McCown, to Eli Manning, and to Matt Leinart. One of those 3 are Hall of Famers because they won 2 Super Bowls. And you could even argue Eli Manning's numbers without the Super Bowls don't warrant him being in there. He does because he won those 2 and he had a really solid career. I just don't understand. This guy was a turnover machine. Listen to these. He had, even during the greatest show on turf, this guy threw 53 interceptions, had 23 fumbles. That's just his time with the Rams before he got benched for Mark Bulger.
And he doesn't even get in if Trent Green doesn't get hurt.
Right. This guy was never planned to be the starter. He gets kicked out of Green Bay so fast, he was barely there for a week. He has a great arena football. I have no doubt that he should have gotten his shot.
He's a great story.
He's an unbelievable story. They're making a movie on him, as they should. But he doesn't belong with a gold jacket. I thought after 5 years of him being away from the game, people would realize, hey, this guy was benched 4 times. He was a career backup. Now, I love his story with Eli Manning, right? He gets pulled. Eli Manning's struggling. They're going to put Warner back in, and he goes to Coughlin and says, listen, you cannot bench him again. It's going to ruin his confidence. I'm here to be the backup. That's what I was here to do. Even he admits, I was here to be a backup.
Right.
He won 1 Super Bowl with the greatest show on turf, where he had Marshall Faulk, he had Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, Orlando Pace, all Hall of Famers in their own right. I don't think Torrey Holt got in yet, but he should be in there. He goes to Arizona where he has Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden when he was in his prime.
Look,
I mean, he had a great Super Bowl performance, but Larry Fitzgerald had a much better game. I mean, I could throw to Larry Fitzgerald.
Look, he was going to be on my list as well, but when I heard you grabbed him, the only person happy about him being in the Hall of Fame is Joe Namath, because he's no longer the weakest quarterback in the Hall of Fame.
And that's only because he got hurt.
Yes.
I mean, Joe Namath was great for, 3-4 years?
No, he was great for most of his career.
Namath is arguably, he was good for most of his career.
Joe Namath is arguably one of the most important quarterbacks in the history of the game.
He is. And the only reason I say that Joe Namath wasn't great for all of his career is because his knees were so bad, especially at the end. I'm surprised the dude can still walk.
That was in a time where surgery was more like
well, how many times did they experiment on his knees? I'd have to look it up, and I know he had a ton of surgeries. But Kurt Warner didn't have that excuse. Kurt Warner was benched. Again, Mark Bulger, Josh McCown. Hall of Fame quarterbacks don't get benched for those 2 guys. For Matt Leinart, Kurt Warner was on that team when they drafted Matt Leinart. The Arizona Cardinals said, we don't think you're good enough to be our starting quarterback, so we're going to draft Matt Leinart. By the way, he was only with them for a year when they made that decision.
I think the best thing to say about Kurt Warner is every time the game required it, the situation was dire, he'd step up, and he was capable of taking a team and putting him on his back and leading him to the Super Bowl.
Did he? Because look what happened against the Patriots the next year. They had a chance to make the drive, and he couldn't make it happen. Adam Vinatieri makes one of the greatest kicks in the history of the NFL. It was unbelievable. And he won an MVP, and he should have won the MVP. The same way Cam Newton should have won the MVP when he won in 2015. But you can't sit here and say Cam Newton's a Hall of Famer because he won an MVP, because he's not. I mean,
Look,
he is now. I mean, if Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame, I mean, Cam Newton has to be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, if Kurt Warner's in the Hall of Fame, Jim Plunkett belongs in the Hall of Fame. And Plunkett was a #1 draft pick, but he came in the same thing. He led 2 Raiders teams
He did.
to Super Bowl wins.
He was benched
Eli
several times in
Manning,
his career. Ken Anderson.
yeah.
You have Kurt Warner in the Hall of Fame. You don't have Ken Anderson in the Hall of Fame.
Ken Anderson is a much better quarterback.
Sterling Sharp, one of the greatest receivers of all time, just got hurt. He had a neck injury, or he's on those Super Bowl Packer teams. You have Kurt Warner in the Hall of Fame and not Sterling Sharp? How long did it take Tim Brown to get in the Hall of Fame? And Kurt Warner's a first ballot Hall of Famer?
That's what really blew me away. You say a lot of things.
Because Terrell Owens is a big mouth, you took the 3rd greatest receiver of all time and didn't allow him to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, which is a joke. I agree with T.O. not showing up because that was unacceptable. But yet you have Kurt Warner as a first ballot Hall of Famer.
What do you want me
Hall of Famer doesn't get benched for Josh McCowan.
What do you want me to tell you? He is a media darling.
He's
got
great on the air. He could be a Hall of Famer as an analyst for sure.
Maybe. He's got a great story. He was a grocery store bagger.
Unbelievable story.
And I think that's what people fell in love with.
He's a great story just because he was forced to live in Iowa, which is not a fun place to be. But I've been there. He played minor league ball there. Not making fun of Iowa. It's flat, and it's windy, and it's cold.
I'm not participating in this conversation. I love a lot of people that live in Iowa. Thank you for watching.
I do too. I've heard Des Moines has made itself look a lot nicer than I remember.
Back to Kurt Warner before we lose any audience we'll ever have in Iowa.
I love Iowa. I went to camp there when I was a kid. I like Iowa. But back to Kurt Warner, he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. He shouldn't. I don't, to this day, I don't understand how he was put in the Hall of Fame. You have a lot of great players that weren't in there. Jerry Kramer took so long to get in. You have Leroy Butler, another great Packer's not in there. Ken Anderson isn't in the Hall of Fame.
Well, hopefully Leroy Butler's going in this year.
Yeah, hopefully Ken Anderson gets in there. I just don't get how you can now look at players and look at their records and not put them in the Hall of Fame. I mean, you set your precedent with Kurt Warner going in.
And I hope somebody who's watching can give me a better defense for why Kurt Warner should be in the Hall of Fame as a first ballot Hall of Famer, because honestly, he was on my overrated list as well.
I don't know, but we got to move on to your number one. Like you said, defend him. Please defend why this guy should be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think he should. I love Kurt Warner as an analyst. Again, his story is great, but this is a man that was benched 4 times in his career. He had 3 Super Bowl runs, which is awesome. But like you said, Jim Plunkett took 2 Raiders teams to Super Bowls, and that dude's not in the Hall of Fame.
No, he's not. Eli Manning's another guy. He's won 2 Super Bowls. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Should be in the Hall of Fame, but I don't put Kurt Warner at that elite level to wear a gold jacket. I just don't.
I don't either. It makes no sense to me, but we'll move on. I need to do something before we go to this next one. Hold on.
Go ahead.
You are not allowed to have this while I review this. Favre.
Yep.
Favre, the Southern Mississippi Storm. He is like El Nino. He goes wherever he goes. It's an amazing thing. It's something you never forget.
Can I say something?
El Favre.
Can I say something?
I don't want to let you say anything.
Well, you're going to have to.
You can't have this anymore.
He is the most entertaining quarterback in the history of the game. He is the gunslinger.
Yes.
I love Brett Favre. He is one of the Packers' Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I love the Packers. I love Brett Favre. Brett Favre is one of the most overrated quarterbacks. Again, he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, not even a question. But is he love your face. Is he the greatest quarterback of all time, or even in that discussion?
No. He's the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yes, they do. Packer fans do it all the time. If I'm calling out Yankees fans, I'm calling out my own right now. They think Brett Favre is all that and a bag of chips. They put him ahead of Aaron Rodgers or Bart Starr, and he's neither. He
saved the Packers. This
He-
is the quarterback of my childhood.
yes.
All-time leader in yards.
Do you want me to start on the list?
All-time leaders in touchdowns. All-time leader in starts.
508 touchdowns. He also leads the league in a record 336 interceptions. Oh, by the way, he also leads the league with 166 fumbles all time. He was sacked 525 times. He could make a throw. The greatest throw he ever made was as a Viking.
Yes.
You knew one thing going
that
into
frozen rope to the back of the end zone versus the Niners. That's one of the greatest throws I've ever seen in the
correct.
NFL. Favre, I love you. I'm just going to set you down because I want to hold you the whole time.
So, one thing you knew going into any game that Favre played, he was going to make a big play. May not be for your team, but he was going to make one.
It was the biggest complaint I had about Aaron Rodgers for so long. It was Favre going into 2 minutes. One of two things were going to happen. You were either going to win or lose in a spectacular way.
Yeah, but Rodgers goes into 2 minutes and he wins the games. He can throw the Hail Marys. Do you remember the last game he played as a Packer?
He got cold.
He threw an interception. Do you remember the last game he played, Viking fans, for your franchise? One of the worst interceptions on the face of the planet.
Yeah, it was bad.
He is a Hall of Famer.
Holmgren doesn't leave. Whatever happened between Ron Wolf and Mike Holmgren, where Holmgren ends up leaving and then Ron Wolf leaves a few years later and we get stuck with Mike Sherman for the next decade, I'll never understand. Like, we win more Super Bowls. I mean, we beat the Broncos if it wasn't for Holmgren announcing that he's leaving for Seattle.
Okay,
he's a three-time MVP.
That's
he's a Super Bowl
supposition.
champion.
Yes.
He's an NFL Offensive Player of the Year, 3-time All-Pro, 3-team second-team
and
All-Pro.
He lost.
4-time NFL passing touchdown leader, 2-time NFL yards leader. Yes, I'm going through all of these. You can just wait. NFL 1990 All-Decade Team, NFL 100th Anniversary All-Time Team, number 4 retired, Green Bay Packers Hall of Famer. He's an actual Hall of Famer. Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year, Southern Mississippi Eagles, number 4 retired. This guy is amazing. How is he overrated?
Was a great quarterback because if you're most Packer fans look at him and I've heard it on NFL Network, I've heard it on ESPN with some of their announcers saying he's the greatest quarterback of all time. No, he's not. He's not even, if he's in the top 10, he's at number 10. He is overrated because he's not as great as people assign him to. Excuse me, John Madden, he's not as great as you said he was. 3 games ended. 3 playoff games ended because he threw ridiculous interceptions. You can't be considered the greatest of all time with that kind of a record. I love Brett Favre. He was the gunslinger. He also broke my heart on more occasions than I'd like to count by making stupid throws. Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than he was.
Yes, I said that.
Bart Starr is a better quarterback than he was. Joe Montana is a better quarterback than he was. John Elway is a better quarterback than he was. I could go down the list even further. Warren Moon was a better quarterback than he was.
Yeah, I'm not denying that.
You want me to continue?
Favre is still one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time to ever play the game. I'm not saying he's the number 1.
He's not even in the top 10.
I don't agree.
If he is, he's at 10.
But he's there.
He took advantage of rules that were made for him. He's got the record streak of 299 games, which to
97.
the detriment of the Jets. He should have come out in that season, and they may have went farther if he would have just taken a break. But he was more worried about that streak than he was about the Jets getting into the playoffs and winning. I love Brett Favre. He is the gunslinger, but he's not the greatest of all time. He is an overrated all-time great.
He may not love you anymore, Brett, but I still love you.
Did I not start this by saying I love Brett Favre? I loved watching Brett Favre.
You were my hero growing up, as was my father till this conversation.
All right.
I will keep this on my side for the rest of this conversation,
Now-
just for you.
Okay, and now we're going to somebody even more ridiculous, and I'm going to give you a chance one more time before we start this.
No,
All right, you can retract this name and pick another one.
no, I don't even have any stats
Then
because I don't need them.
you're going to
Because
need them.
it's the point of baseball. Mine is a baseball player, and it drives me crazy about baseball.
I apologize for my son for the name he is about to put up there, the greatest shortstop of all time.
No, Honus Wagner is the most overrated players in American sports history, and it's not even close.
Well, you might as well say something before I go into my list.
He's not. It's not even close. Nobody's seen him play. This man retired in 1917. He literally retired longer ago than your and my ages combined.
My dad was born in 1917. Your grandfather.
Yeah, okay, he was born in 1917, which means my grandfather never even saw Honus Wagner play.
Okay.
In fact, a small few saw him play because he played in a small market of Pittsburgh where not a lot of people watched. This is what drives me nuts about baseball is you have this guy and you're going to read off a list full of stats.
I'm going to do more than that.
Because numbers are awesome. But he played in a dead ball era where they literally used the same ball the entire time. And I'm not saying he's not a Hall of Famer. I'm not saying he's not the greatest shortstop of his generation. But the game's changed, and this is a problem with baseball, is baseball purists like yourselves literally have built this Mount Olympus of players where they can't be touched. And nobody's seen this guy play. Nobody's seen him field a ball. And there's no film of him doing anything athletic. And yet we're going to sit here and say this is the greatest shortstop of all time.
Okay. Are you done?
I'll let you continue, but I
Okay.
don't think I'm done.
Okay. So I'm going to start it by saying a couple things. Babe Ruth called him the most irreplaceable player of all time.
Yeah,
Babe
great.
Ruth.
A guy that
Hold
hold
on.
died 30 years
Babe
before
Ruth
you were
said
born.
that. The Giants manager, one of the greatest managers in the game, John McGraw.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I get his quote right. Only way to get a ball past Honus Wagner was to hit a ball 8 feet over his head.
Yeah,
And
which is
McGraw
great.
also said
He played with
that
a ball
what-
that was never changed.
McGraw also said Wagner was the closest thing there is to a perfect player. Now let me go through this a little bit. He was one of the first 5 Hall of Fame inductees.
Yep.
He tied for second with Babe Ruth. They finished second to Ty Cobb.
Right.
He was an 8-time batting title winner.
Right.
Still the most in baseball history.
Yep.
Hit 300 or better 15 straight years.
Right.
358 lifetime batting average.
Sure.
Second player ever to get 3,000 hits. Led the National League in RBI 4 times.
Yep.
On base percentage 4 times. Stolen bases 5 times. Slugging percentage 6 times. Extra base hits 7 times.
Awesome.
Top 10 for home runs 11 times.
How many home runs
And
was it?
defense, he led the league and put out twice. Double plays for a shortstop 4 times. Fielding percentage as a shortstop 4 times. And as John McGraw said, probably the greatest, closest thing to a perfect player you could ever have. And that's from his contemporaries.
Let me ask you this real quick.
Sure.
Let me ask you this, because I'm going to stop you right there, because you and I had a conversation last week when it came to our Mount Rushmores, right?
Yeah.
Because you named off a lot of great statistics, and it's awesome. Yet you told me that Aaron Rodgers was not the greatest quarterback in Packer history. You look at Aaron Rodgers' stats. Aaron Rodgers is the greatest QBR of all time. Aaron Rodgers is a 4-time MVP. Aaron Rodgers has a strong chance to
I didn't
lead
mention his championships.
of all time.
I didn't mention the times he won.
But let me get back into it though. You just looking at a stat line, going away from the championships, just looking at the stat line.
Mm-hmm.
You told me that Aaron Rodgers is not better than Bart Starr, and yet you want to read off stats that we can't verify.
I never said that.
We can't verify these stats.
Of course we
There's
can.
no film at all on this guy.
No, but the one thing great about baseball is that there were stats. There was a scorekeeper for every single game, and all of his contemporaries said what an unbelievably great defensive and offensive player he was.
I'm not denying that, but again, this is the problem with baseball, is that you guys have created this Mount Olympus of players that played over 100 years ago. No matter what, I remember those conversations when I was a kid. You're watching these guys like Alex Rodriguez. All you hear is, yeah, he's the second greatest shortstop of all time because he can't beat Honus Wagner. Then what's the point of going if you're not the greatest of all time? There's
Alex,
no conversation today.
On.
No, let me finish.
Hold on, but Alex Rodriguez would probably have been considered even greater than him if it weren't for the juice. So that's not a fair statement. People were looking at Rodriguez and comparing him to Honus Wagner and going,
but again,
this guy may be right there.
A completely different game. You mentioned he led the leagues in home runs. If I remember correctly, in 1919, Babe Ruth set a record for 20 home runs. That was the most home runs, double, by the way, the most home runs ever hit in Major League Baseball at that time. So don't give me this crap saying Honus Wagner led the league in home runs when the leader in home run hit 8 home runs. I don't want to hear that stuff.
When nobody else is doing it, the guy who could do it
is that
have great.
Fences back in those days. Literally, the ball kept rolling.
And did he get all the way around? Yes.
Yeah, great.
Because he was strong enough to hit it over his head.
People today couldn't hit a line drive that kept on rolling and wouldn't have the speed to get there. I'd love
Probably
to see the
not.
amount of home runs Ricky Henderson had if he didn't have fences.
Look, I would have liked to have seen how many home runs Josh Gibson would have had he played.
Yeah, I would too.
But I'm not taking. You can't take anything away from the fact that Honus Wagner, going by his contemporaries and all the stories, was the greatest single shortstop to ever play.
Show me a stat where it shows that his numbers were better in the beginning of the game when that ball was brand new versus the end of the game when that ball had spit and goobers and dirt all over it. Because if the ball's rolling slow when that ball comes off of there, especially with the bats they're using at that time, I mean,
the fact that he was that good throughout the games, even more reason he was great. I'm not saying that today's players aren't better.
But this is why I say he's overrated, though.
He's not overrated.
The problem with baseball is that nobody's going to these games anymore because we're not seeing anything special. That's why 1998 was so great, because it's something we hadn't seen before, and people ran to the stadiums to go and see Sammy Sosa.
Yeah, until they found out all those guys were cheaters.
It doesn't matter, though. It's something we hadn't seen. And the problem with baseball is you guys have set this Mount Olympus. Look, Ken Griffey Jr. wasn't a unanimous Hall of Famer because Babe Ruth wasn't a unanimous Hall of Famer.
Well, that was a stupid thing. Ken Griffey Jr. should have been.
That's the problem with baseball. There's no film on this guy. There is no verifiable way to watch him do something athletic. Plus, he played in a different game. We don't Cy Young. We don't even give credit for the most wins because he was literally bouncing the ball off.
Well, he played before 1900, so different argument.
But it's not, though, because before 1920 is a different game because it's the same ball. Spitballs were allowed at that time. Now it's a fresh ball.
Have you ever tried to hit a spitball?
Yeah, it's tough to do.
Yes.
But I'm saying the ball was different. It was a different game. It rolled different in the outfield. There were no fences to stop these balls for most of his career.
He was playing against guys like Christy Mathewson, who was every bit as fast as Randy Johnson.
Where's the proof?
I, again, can go by contemporaries. That's what makes baseball great. You can have the argument.
Contemporaries are dead.
But they all commented on him.
Contemporaries lived 130 years ago.
You're being ridiculous. So nothing before film is going to count, right?
I'm not saying that, but it's the problem.
You just did.
What I am saying, I'm not saying it doesn't count, and I'm not saying he's great. I think it's ridiculous that we literally are holding today's contemporaries, today's athletes, to a completely different game and to stats that can't be hit because the game's not played the same way.
Ozzy Smith probably was every bit as good a defensive player as Wagner, but you got to put it in.
Greatest. You want to talk to me about Ozzy Smith? I'm all game, because you know what? You watched him play. I never watched him play. The problem is we're talking about guys being the greatest that my grandfather never saw play. My grandfather retired. My grandfather was born the year Honus Wagner retired.
But the great thing about baseball is they had sports writers back there in that time, and you had contemporaries, you had players.
It's a different game.
It's not a different game, and that's what makes it's what makes baseball great.
Why isn't Cy Young counted?
Because it was before 1900. Modern baseball is considered from 1900 forward.
1920 started the live ball era, which leads to what we play today. Honus Wagner played a dead ball era where they literally used the same ball.
Well, then
throughout
so
the
did Ty
game.
Cobb.
He did.
And I'm not discounting what they achieved.
They aren't great players. I'm not saying that. Honus Wagner is one of the greatest players of all time.
He is the greatest shortstop of all time.
I think it's unfair to say that when we've never seen him do anything athletic. There's no film to watch this guy.
I've got his records, and I've got his contemporaries.
Let's talk about Aaron Rodgers versus Bart Starr then, right now.
Sure.
Because you just told me that Bart Starr was better than Aaron Rodgers.
I did.
And all the stats go against you.
Except for one. 5 championships in 7 years. And oh, by the way, Bart Starr could have, and Aaron Rodgers could have done it as well. He could have went on that team. I don't know whether he wouldn't have held up.
Honus Wagner didn't play the game the way that they play it today. Honus Wagner played with a different ball. Yes, he did.
Baseball is still baseball.
It's a different ball.
It's a different ball, correct.
Babe Ruth went from hitting 20 home runs, setting an all-time record, to having the live ball era where they didn't change the ball, or they did change the ball.
So imagine what Wagner would have done.
60 home runs.
Imagine what Wagner would have done with a live ball.
But imagine how much faster that ball's coming to him at shortstop.
Not coming that much faster.
That's what I'm saying. You show me that he's just as good a shortstop the first inning as in the ninth.
I am going by his contemporaries. When Babe Ruth,
that's fine, but
the greatest player,
contemporaries literally died 100 years ago.
When Babe Ruth, the greatest player of all time, says that he was completely irreplaceable,
and I'm sure,
and all the guys who voted for him for the Hall of Fame saw him play.
I'm sure he was. I just think it's ridiculous that sports writers and fans, without question, put this guy at the #1 shortstop of all time when nobody's ever seen him play. And any new fan that comes in and wants to talk about their favorite, that's what's great about football. I can talk about Aaron Rodgers, who's in this generation right now, and we can actually have a conversation about Bart Starr and which is greater.
Well, because he was in my lifetime.
Right, but we can talk about Curly Lambeau. We can do all of that, and we're willing to have the conversation to say players today are better than players back then. And yet with baseball, we can't have that conversation.
Sure we can.
These baseball purists that have never seen these players ever play, and they're saying, well, that guy's the greatest of all time. You've never seen him play.
Because of the records. That's a great thing about baseball.
Which is awesome, but, well, Babe Ruth said it, so that must be true.
Yes, and it makes it true, and so did John McGraw, who was actually there. All the guys who saw him play.
Baseball. There's this Mount Olympus baloney that you guys hold these guys to, these gods that nobody can ever touch, is hurting baseball.
Okay, you talk about generation. Apparently, according to you, unless you've seen him play or we have film on him, we can't talk about him as great players.
That's not what I said.
That's exactly what you said.
I said he's one of the greatest shortstops of all time, especially for
Really?
his
How can you prove that? You never saw him play?
Because, like you said, you have stats for his time period. But all I'm saying is that we are talking about a guy that nobody has seen play, that retired over 100 years ago, and nobody can be better than him.
No, I never said that.
But that's the conversations that are happening.
This
man is named as the greatest shortstop of all time, and nobody's seen him play that's alive today.
But baseball historians, his contemporaries, all said he was by far and away the greatest shortstop of all time. Now, when Alex Rodriguez...
He's named the greatest shortstop of all time when the game had been around for 20 years. Like you said, he played in the modern era when the modern era just started.
Sure. And he was by the time the Hall of Fame came along, he was one of the first 5 inductees all of those players said he was the absolute greatest of them all.
Which is great. Those players have never seen these guys today. They've never saw the guys in the 60s and the 70s, the 80s and the 90s.
Which makes baseball great.
Literally didn't see any of the players in the 60s. So how can they say, yes, he's the greatest of all time when they died before most of baseball was ever played?
I trust baseball historians. I trust the broadcasters who've researched it. And
for
all of them, every one of them said that Wagner was the best.
And then they all died. Because that's what people do that are 100 years old.
You're being ridiculous.
I'm not, though, because, yes, Babe Ruth said, he's the most irreplaceable person ever. Well, Babe Ruth died in the 1930s. 1940s, whatever. So he never saw Jackie Robinson come up and play.
He was the second baseman.
Bob Gibson pitch.
Jackie Robinson was the second
Alex
baseman.
Rodriguez. He never saw Ozzy Smith. He never saw any of these guys ever play, and he never saw how baseball is played today versus it was back then. So how can you say, well, I take Babe Ruth because he said he was the most irreplaceable player of all time when he died in the 1940s. That's over 60 years ago.
Because
Longer than that. That's over 80 years ago.
I can look at his records. I can go from his contemporaries, all of which said that he could do more fielding, and he had the best records as a fielder.
Never saw people play today.
That's
you
why
can say Bart Starr because you saw Bart Starr play, and you've seen Aaron Rodgers play.
Sure.
Babe Ruth didn't even see Jackie Robinson come into baseball.
He didn't. But that doesn't mean other people hadn't, and that doesn't mean the people who've done all the research still today put Honus Wagner at the top of the list. And oh, by the way, Alex Rodriguez might have.
This is the same problem that you have with Craig Counsell. Is this analytic stuff that everybody's obsessed with? We're talking about numbers when you don't get to see these people play.
Time out. Did I mention one analytic in there? No, I didn't, because I don't like analytics. There were stats about Nolan Ryan that were based on analytics I didn't include. But with Honus Wagner, his contemporaries all said he was greatest. His records stand far and above anything else. He still holds records today from that era.
When the game was different. When the ball was never switched
Guys were
out.
still throwing it as hard.
Heavier.
And they could still throw it harder. Yep. And they could still throw it as hard, and you still had to play the game. Baseball, the great thing about it is football has changed.
We're getting mad at people for putting tack on the ball. Imagine what they had on the ball back in the day.
Again, until you try to catch a spitball, you don't know how much they move.
Nobody was throwing 100 miles per hour back
in the day. Oh, that's not true. Christy Mathewson threw every bit of 100. His contemporaries and the guys who saw him.
That's right. They had
there wasn't a gun. Nope, there wasn't a gun, but you can
track these.
You're being
how
ridiculous.
Big was the fish you caught, man? How big was that fish that you caught? This is the problem with baseball.
It's a great thing about baseball.
Baseball needs to change, but we get into these purists where it's like, this is how the game was played, and this is how it needs to stay.
Have I ever said any of that? No.
But
I can compare.
Nuts.
I can compare eras. I can too. I can compare Reggie Jackson with Babe Ruth. I can compare Hank Aaron to Babe Ruth, to Willie Mays, to Ken Griffey Jr.
They played in the live ball era.
And then I can go back and have Ty Cobb and the Honus Wagners. Yes, you can.
Game.
We're going to leave it there. He's wrong, but I'd like to hear your comment supporting me.
This is what makes me sick about baseball. Your Mount Olympus of people who played over 100 years ago. Nobody can be better than them. This is a dead ball era. For those of you that don't know, they never switched out the ball when Honus Wagner played. It's the same ball. Now they switch it out after every 2 pitches almost.
I didn't say today's game was better.
You can't say he's the greatest shortstop of all time when he played in a different
era
and nobody's seen him play.
Oh my God. Hundreds of people saw him play, and they all said the same thing. But their words and their records still are there. Okay, we can go. We're getting circular on this. We're going back to the same arguments. You're wrong. Thank you for trying to convince people, but you're being ridiculous.
No, I'm not. Drives me nuts.
Oh, you drive me nuts.
Go nuts about baseball in general.
Thank God this is how families can talk to each other and still leave the room and still love each other, even though he's being as ridiculous as he can.
Right now because of how angry I am that you are defending
the greatest shortstop of all time.
No, it's ridiculous. But you guys tell us in the comments below. This is why we didn't talk about this all week, because it would have ruined the week. But we got it out of our system now. Honus Wagner was
the greatest shortstop to ever play the game. Derek Jeter was not.
Derek Jeter was not, but either was Honus Wagner. There's no proof. He retired in 1917, over 100 years ago. But anyways, we are going to move on from this conversation. If you have other topics that you'd like us to talk about, put it down in the comments below. And while you're down there, don't forget to do this part right here where you like, subscribe, and hit that little bell, because I like it when it makes the ringing noise. It makes me happy. And then you can see all the videos that we drop. Like I said before, we're doing this about once a week. So please, or actually not even about. We've been dropping one every single week.
Sometimes more than once a week.
Sometimes more than once a week. We're going to continue doing that, and you can get notified whenever we do so you can enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making this show, except for now when he makes me very angry.
And please make sure you share this so that other parts of your family can see these videos as well.
Yes.
Because maybe you fight like we do and argue about things like we do in our family.
We need to end the show. I need to get out of the same room with you. You say Brett Favre's overrated, and then you talk about a player.
The greatest shortstop of all time. Yeah.
Anyways, thank you
I
so
still
much
love you.
for joining us. This has been Sports Talk with Dad, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everybody.